Hello and welcome to the Nightmare Vault. Today we'll be looking at probably one of the most well-known, if not the most well-known creepypasta out there, and that is Jeff the Killer. Not only will we be looking at what I assume to be the original story, although I've heard things about there was a story before this one that didn't take off as well as this, but I'm not 100% sure. And also looking at the reboot, which was made as an effort to, well, make the story good. Apparently the story was that bad that they were going to get rid of it off the wikis and that and replace it with the reboot. But then due to the backlash, they ended up keeping it along with the reboot. I think the reboot was done by competition, if I remember correctly, and whoever story won would be the reboot story, if I remember correctly. My memory is a bit fuzzy because, this has been a while ago. Yeah. This wasn't the reboot 2016, 2018. Let's actually just pull up just to double check. 2018, sort of when I was probably not as into creepypastas as I was, but that's because life was getting busy. I didn't have much time to enjoy the stories as well. I guess I kind of do now, which I'm not sure that says about my life and where it's going right now. But other than my crisis that's going on right now, we should get on with the original story, which I wonder if you're familiar with this story.
I am not. So yeah, as usual, I've never heard of this story before you telling me. Yeah, I guess really the only creepypasta that I am somewhat familiar with would be Slender Man. Other than that, yeah, every creepypasta is very new.
Which is surprising because for me, this is like the basics. To even consider yourself like a creepypasta fan, you kind of have to know these ones. Although I think the biggest thing for here today is the story, what deserves to be as popular as it is, or is it, completely overrated? Which there's quite a few people in the community that kind of said that was the case.
Right.
So I guess you're going to have to be the judge of that.
I guess so, yeah.
I think I'm going to be, biased either way.
Yeah, a bit of an outside source. And it'll be interesting to also compare the quote-unquote original to the reboot.
Although I think I'm going to be biased towards the original because I don't think I've actually I may have read a bit of the reboot or heard a bit of the reboot, but I don't think I've read or listened to the whole thing or read it the whole thing.
Right.
Because I tend to, before I really judge a story, read it and listen to it and then judge it.
Fair enough.
Just to see what kind of gets omitted when people record it.
Yes, for sure.
Even though a lot of the people that I watch tend to stay as faithful as they possibly can. Usually just shortening some words and that just for the sake of brevity or sections for brevity.
Yeah.
But I guess with this long tangent out of the way, we should get right into it. Excerpt from local newspaper. Ominous unknown killer is still at large. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise. After a little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he has survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells his story. I had a bad dream and I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason the window was open, even though I remember it being closed before I went to bed. I got up and shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling like someone was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There, in the little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains, were a pair of two eyes. They weren't regular eyes. They were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there, watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said it. A simple phrase, but said in a way only a madman could speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream, and that's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back. I kicked. I punched. I rolled around trying to knock him off me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. It went into my dad's shoulders. The man probably would have finished him off if one of the neighbours hadn't alerted the police. They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash like glass breaking as I came out of my room. I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. I looked out to see him vanish into the distance. I can tell you one thing. I'll never forget that face, those cold, evil eyes, and that psychotic smile. They will never leave I head. The police are still on look for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description in this story, please contact your local police department. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of those fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain though. A new, better house, what was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of their neighbors came by. "Hello," she said. "I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you, and well, I just wanted to introduce myself and to introduce my son." She turns around and calls her son over. "Billy, these are our new neighbors." Billy said hi and ran back to play in his yard. "Well," said Jeff's mum, "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband Peter, and my two sons, Jeff and Lou." They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his mum. "Mum, why would you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid." "Jeff," said his mother, "we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend some time with our neighbours. Now we're going to that party and that's final." Jeff started to talk but stopped himself, knowing that he couldn't do anything. Whenever his mum said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at his ceiling when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much a pain, but a weird feeling. He dismissed it as just some random feeling. He heard his mother call him down to get his stuff. He walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked downstairs to get breakfast and get ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time it was stronger. It gave him a slight tugging pain, but he once again dismissed it as he and Lou finished breakfast. They walked down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus, and then all of a sudden, some kids on a skateboard jumped over them only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. "Hey, what the hell?" The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked his skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wears an Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans. Well. It looks like we got some new meat." Suddenly, two other kids appeared. One was super skinny and the other was huge. "Well, since you're new here, I'd like to introduce ourselves. Over there is Keith." Jeff and Lou looked over to the skinny kid. He had a dopey face that you would expect a sidekick to have, and he is Troy. They looked over at the fat kid. Talk about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling. "And I," said the first kid, "I'm Randy. Now, for all the kids in this neighborhood, there is a small price for bus fare, if you catch my drift." Lou stood up, ready to punch the lights out of the kid's eyes when one of his friends pulled a knife on him. Tisk, tisk, tisk. "I had hoped you would be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way." The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong, a burning sensation. He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid. "Listen here, you little punk. Give back my bro's wallet, or else." Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife. "Oh, and what will you do exactly?" Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it. Randy screamed and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hand. Troy and Keith rushed Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked all over. Lou could do nothing but look in amazement at Jeff. "Jeff, how did you?" That was all he said. They saw the bus coming, and they knew they would be blamed for the whole thing, so they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. All they did was sit and listen. Lou just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids, but Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he felt how powerful it was, the urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't help feeling happy. He felt that strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school. Even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop and how he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore, he felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice, "It was a wonderful day." Next morning, he heard a knock at his front door. He walked down to find 2 policemen at the door. His mother looked back at him with an angry look. "Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked these kids, that it wasn't regular fighting, and that they were stabbed. Stabbed, son." Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing Mother that it was true. "Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives out on me and Lou." "Son," said one of the coppers, "we found 3 kids, 2 stabbed and 1 having a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that you fled the scene. Now, what does that tell us?" Jeff knew it was no use. He could say him and Lou had been attacked, but then there was no proof it was not them who attacked first. They could not say that they weren't fleeing because the truth be told they were. So Jeff couldn't defend himself or Lou. "Son, call down your brother." Jeff couldn't do it since it was him who beat up all the kids. "Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up the kids. Lou tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me." The cop looked at his partner and they both nod. "Well, kid, it looks like a year in juvie." "Wait," says Lou. They all looked up to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their guns and locked them on Lou. "It was me. I beat up those little punks. Have the marks to prove it." He lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises as if he was in a struggle. "Son, put the knife down," said the officer. Lou held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops. "No, Lou, it was me. I did it." Jeff had tears running down his face. Poor bro. Trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away. The police led Lou out to the patrol car. "Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them I was the one who beat up those kids." Jeff's mother put her hand on his shoulders. "Jeff, you don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can stop." Jeff watched helplessly as the cops speeded off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. "Son, what is it?" Jeff couldn't answer. His cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him. Jeff wept in the driveway. An hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad and disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by, with no word from Lou at JDC. No friends to hang out with. Nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Sunday, when Jeff is woke up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face. "Jeff, it's the day," she said as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room. What's today?" asked Jeff as he stirs awake. "Why, it's Billy's party." He was now fully awake. "Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after?" There was a long pause. "Jeff, we both know what happened. I think this party could be a thing that brightens up the past days. Now get dressed." Jeff's mother walked out of the room and downstairs to get ready herself. He fought himself to get up. He picked out a random shirt and a pair of jeans and walked downstairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up. His mother in a dress and his father in a suit, and he thought, why would they ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party? "Son, is that all you're going to wear?" said Jeff's mum. "Better than wearing too much," he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit it with a smile. "Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression," said his father. Jeff grunted and went back to his room. "I don't have any fancy clothes," he yelled downstairs. "Just pick something up," called his mother. He looked around in his closet for what he would call fancy. He found a pair of black dress pants he had for special occasions and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with it though. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts, none of which go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. "You wearing that?" they both said. His mother looked at her watch. "Oh no, time to change. Let's just go," she said, as she herded Jeff and his father out the door. There he crossed the street over to Barbara's and Billy's house. They knocked on the door and at it appeared that Barbara, just like his parents, way overdressed. As they walked inside, all Jeff could see were adults. No kids. "The kids are out in the yard. Jeff, how about you go and meet some of them?" said Barbara. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of kids. They were running around in the weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. He might as well be standing in a Toys R Us. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and hat. "Hey, wanna play?" he said. "Ah, no, kid. I'm way too old for this stuff." The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face. "Please?" said the kid. "Fine," said Jeff. He put on the hat and started to pretend shooting at the kids. At first he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he started to actually have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off of Lou. So he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise, a weird roiling noise. Damn, it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred. "Hello, Jeff, is it?" he said. "We have some unfinished business." Jeff saw his bruised nose. "I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you, and you get my brother sent to JDC. Randy got angry in his eyes. "Oh no, I don't go asking for even. I go for winning. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today." As he said that, Randy rushed at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose and Jeff grabbed him by the ears and headbutted him. Jeff pushed Randy off of him and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith both pulled guns out of their pockets. "No one interrupts or guts will fly," they said. Randy pulled a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulders. Jeff screamed and fell to his knees. Randy started kicking him in the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabs his foot and twists it, causing Randy to fall to the ground. Jeff stood up and walked towards the back door. Troy grabbed him. "Need some help?" He picks up Jeff by the back of the collar and throws him through the patio door. As Jeff tries to stand, he is kicked down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts to cough up blood. "Come on, Jeff. Fight me." He picks Jeff up and throws him into the kitchen. Randy sees a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head. "Fight." He throws Jeff back into the living room. "Come on, Jeff. Look at me." Jeff glances up, his face riddled with blood. "I was the one who got your brother sent to JDC. And now you're just going to sit there and let him rot in there for a whole year? You should be ashamed." Jeff starts to get up. "Oh, finally you stand up and fight." Jeff is now on his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again he gets that strange feeling, the one in which he hasn't felt for a while. Finally, he's up, says Randy as he runs at Jeff. That's when it happens. Something inside of Jeff snaps. His psyche is destroyed, all rational thinking is gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him to the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punch causes Randy's heart to stop. As Randy gasps for breath, Jeff hammers down on him, punch after punch. Blood gushes from Randy's body until he takes one final breath and dies. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. The parents, the crying children, even Troy and Keith. Although they easily break from their gaze and point their guns at Jeff, Jeff sees the guns, trained on him, and runs for the stairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let out fire on him, each shot missing. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith following up behind. As they let out their final round of bullets, Jeff ducks into the bathroom. He grabs the towel rack and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Troy swings his knife at Jeff, who backs away and bangs the towel rack into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard, and now all that is left is Keith. He is more agile than Troy though, and ducks when Jeff swings the towel rack. He dropped the knife and grabbed Jeff by the neck. He pushes him into the wall. A thing of bleach falls down on the top of him from the top shelf. It burned both of them, and they both started to scream. Jeff wiped his eyes as best as he could. He pulled back the towel rack and swung it straight into Keith's head. As he lay there, bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. "What's so funny?" asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it on. "What's funny," he said, "is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol." Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flames made contact with him, the flames ignited the alcohol and the vodka. While the alcohol burned him, the bleach bleached his skin. Jeff let out a terrible scream as he caught on fire. He tried to roll out the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol had made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody started screaming as they saw Jeff, now a man on fire, drop to the ground, nearly dead. The last thing Jeff saw was his mother and the other parents trying to extinguish the flames. That's when he passed out. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cast on his shoulder and stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but he realized that there was some tube in his arm. When he tried to get up, it fell out and a nurse rushed in. "I don't think you can just get out of bed yet," she said as she put him back in his bed and reinserted the tube. Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea of what his surroundings were. Finally, after hours, he heard his mother. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked. Jeff couldn't answer, although his face was covered. He was unable to speak. "Oh, honey, I have great news. After all the witness told the police that Randy confessed of trying to attack you, they decided to let Lou go." This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway and having the tube coming out of his arm. "He'll be out tomorrow. You two will be able to be together again." Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbyes. The next couple of weeks were those where Jeff was visited by his family, and then came the day where his bandages were to be removed. His family were all there to see what he would look like. As the doctors unwrapped the bandages from Jeff's face, everyone was on the edge of their seats. They waited until the last bandage holding the cover was over his face was almost removed. "Let's hope for the best," said the doctor. He quickly pulls the cloth, then the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screams at the sight of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad stare awestruck at his face. What happened to my face?" Jeff said. He rushed out of bed and ran to the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress. His face, it's horrible. His lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. His face was turned into a pure white color, and his hair singed from brown to black. He slowly puts his hand to his face. It had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family and then back at the mirror. "Jeff," said Lou, "it's not that bad." "Not that bad," said Jeff. "It's perfect." His family were equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching. "Oh, Jeff, are you okay?" "Okay. I never felt more happy." "Look at me. This face goes perfectly with me." He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind, his sanity snapped. Now he was left as a crazy killing machine. That is, his parents didn't know. "Doctor," said Jeff's mum, "is my son alright, in the head?" "Oh yes, this behaviour is typical for patients that have taken a very large amount of painkillers. If his behaviour doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back here and we'll give him a psychological test." "Oh, thank you, doctor." Jeff's mum went over to Jeff. "Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go." Jeff looked away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile. "Gay, Mom." His mother took him by the shoulder and took him to get his clothes. "This is what came in," said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mum looked down to see the black dress pants and the white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of the blood and now stitched together. Jeff's mum led him to his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left, not knowing that this was their final day of life. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke to a sound coming from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She slowly walked over to see what it was. When she looked into the bathroom, she saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks. "Jeff, what are you doing?" asked his mother. Jeff looked over to his mother. "I couldn't keep smiling, Mummy. It hurt after a while. Now I can smile forever." Jeff's mother noticed his eyes ringed and black. "Jeff, your eyes." His eyes were seemingly never closing. "I couldn't see my face. I got tired and my eyes started to close. I burned out the eyelids so I could forever see myself. My new face." Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son was going insane. "What's wrong, Mummy? Aren't I beautiful?" Yes, son," she said. "Yes, you are. Let me go to get Daddy so he can see your face." She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. "Honey, get the gun. She stopped as she saw Jeff in the doorway holding a knife. "Mummy, you lied." That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with the knife, gutting both of them. His brother Lou woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife ready to plunge it into Lou. Lou thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip. "Shh," Jeff said. "Just go to sleep." Well, that was the story. Lovely, wasn't it?
That's not the word that I would use, but
Yeah. Well, aren't you Captain Obvious?
yeah. So yeah, what drew you to this one, to picking this one?
It's just, again, both like kind of what its popularity, but also kind of like the significance it has, considering that a lot of people get introduced either via this story or one of the other ones that I'll probably be covering in the near future.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just only a matter of time before I had to cover it, so I thought might as well kind of get it out of the way now, although
Yeah.
I feel like I've kind of done a bit of a disservice. But that's just because I wanted to try and kind of do a little bit more than what I normally do.
Yeah, there's definitely...
So yeah, my voice is going to probably be a bit inconsistent.
Definitely some creative choices with some of the accents used.
Oh yeah, and wait for the outtakes.
Oh yeah.
Like, I think the outtakes alone could be probably their own video just for that one story. If not, we'll probably do a supercut version for this video.
But yeah, so I'm going to say, like, as someone who is new to CreepyPasta, I can definitely see why this one is at least as popular as it is, as well as sort of, has like some of that notoriety, that status, that sort of, like, it's...
Oh yeah, like, again, we're kind of talking a bit before because we had a break after wrapping up the recording of it, talking about kind of like the history of it and that.
Yeah, so I can see sort of like, I guess, also its significance in the history of CreepyPasta as well. But I think the thing that probably attracts a lot of people is definitely, kind of the familiarity of this story to a lot of other stories. You know, like obviously it has, sort of like the family moving to a new neighborhood thing, which then leads to the classic sort of bullies tormenting, the new kids sort
Isn't
of
that like a
theme.
bit of a trope in itself?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got the somewhat, I guess you could say, nosy neighbor poking in and introducing themselves and sort of inviting the new family over. So there's a lot there, just from like standard storytelling that obviously just works.
Although I think the biggest reason why I think it cops a lot of flack is just all the claims that it kind of inspired that are of questionable quality.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's where sort of someone like me can come in and just sort of look at it from a different perspective that doesn't have that knowledge of all of those other clones that kind of maybe tarnish the original's legacy. But in saying that, there definitely is some points that could absolutely use some improving. But just direct comparison to some of the other creepypastas that we've covered so far, this one definitely ticks a lot more boxes with the fact that like there's heaps more dialogue. Obviously, not all of the dialogue is like great, but the fact that there is, because I feel a lot of creepypastas and even
Very to the point.
yeah, they're just sort of like constantly describing, there's not a lot of like character development. And this, you get a bit more of a sense that there's like a world around the characters.
And that's what I was trying to aim for, trying to give them different voices and that.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is a story that really works well with it.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's a story where, you could take this many different ways. Yeah.
Just thank God that for the doctor I didn't go German. Because I would have done something like, yeah, he's all good. We just gave him a whole heap of LSD. Yeah.
Whole heap of,
That'll fix him right up.
Yeah. Definitely could have taken it that way as well.
And I think that's like a lot of the outtakes is just me kind of being like, oh, it'd be funny if I did this, and just kind of subconsciously
Yeah.
like, what was that one that was like really funny that I did? Oh,
There was a couple of good ones.
oh yeah. Oh, the one where I was like, probably do my best impression that I'll ever do of Hank Hill.
Oh, yeah. There was, a little bit of Hank Hill in there.
Like with like a bit of Beamer mixed in.
Yeah. That's
Oh, that was a funny one.
It was pretty good.
Well, actually, one of the highlights for me actually recording it was where I almost went off and started singing Bohemian Rhapsody. That was a shame I did. That's kind of a missed opportunity. I should have.
There was a few, singing moments as well.
And everyone knows the bit I would have sung.
Oh, yeah. Something I've criticized of some of the creepypastas that we've covered previously is that, like, they're not necessarily set in a specific location. Whereas I think with this one, because it isn't, and because the characters, there's a bit more life in the characters, I think it works much better. That it's
Not only that, but you can kind of get a sense for the location because you can tell it's like a neighborhood.
Yeah. It really sets up things much better than a lot of other creepypastas.
And wasn't that your biggest criticism of the Strider?
Yeah, maybe not my biggest, but definitely one of the main points is that, that one sort of felt like it needed to be somewhere a little bit more specific just because of like the descriptors of the area that the Strider is sort of, uses as its home turf, I guess, or its lair or its, preferred hunting grounds. Whereas, this one, like...
Oh, Mike Punch.
This one, you can definitely... it could be set anywhere, really. And I think that's why it can work so well and has some good potential. But as for, sort of, I guess, negatives of the story, I think, there's sort of like some comparisons there, particularly in like that bully scene with the fight. It's almost somewhat reminiscent of some scenes in like the Clockwork Orange, but then it's sort of like a big part of that story is like the ultra violence. And it's like the kids are already attracted to it and they know it, where it's like this, it's like the ultra violence is being beaten into and sort of pulled out of the main character.
Actually, that's kind of a cool, interesting point. Although saying that, Clockwork Orange has been on my list to get around to watching for a very long time now.
Good movie, better book, I would say. Just because, there's an interesting story behind the adaptation.
Actually, wasn't it banned in England for like quite a while until Kubrick's death? I think it was England.
I don't think it was England. It might have been, can't remember. Yeah, it was banned somewhere for a while. But yeah.
Although I like Kubrick movies, so I probably will enjoy it.
Yeah.
Actually, now I'm on this topic, favorite Kubrick movie.
Eyes Wide Shut, I think is my favorite.
Didn't he do Full Metal Jacket?
Yes, I believe so.
I really enjoyed that one. I'd probably have to say that.
Yeah.
I think he did it.
I think so too.
I'm going to check. Yep. Directed and produced by Stanley Kubrick. So, yeah, it is the Stanley Kubrick movie. I just had to double check.
Yeah.
I was like, pretty sure.
And then I think other biggest thing is kind of like, obviously, even when we were recording, you made a couple of jokes about how like it is very similar to the Joker, the character of the Joker, and there's
that one that was fucking hilarious. You brought it up.
Yeah, and I think
I just had to stop reading for a bit and be like, I did it at the perfect time.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely a big part of this story as well as that. So going back to the transformation sort of section when there's the fights happening, the first fight. Yeah, I kind of want a little bit more info because that sort of shift of sort of like there's a bit of a scuffle and then out of nowhere, sort of people are getting stabbed and then you're getting a bit of this sort of like somewhat inner dialogue from the main character. You're sort of like talking about their feelings of how like the violence is making them feel good. It felt like a little bit quick that shift.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but at the same time, for me, it kind of fits very well the story because it happens suddenly. So for it to be like kind of over and done real quick and not really dwelled upon.
Yeah, okay.
I think it fits the story in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
Because it gives off the same feeling of like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. So like I can kind of like get past it because I guess, it could just be like a natural instinct thing and then, that sort of switch gets flicked. Because, maybe like...
That's the way I've always thought that like bit as.
Yeah. Because like I think you could definitely add some sort of a preface kind of story which explains to why the family moved. And then that could kind of tie into, maybe...
the main story in that. Which maybe an interesting idea.
I would say that as for the writing, so this is the one big point for me.
And also kind of I think you're going to go make and talk about a completely different point about the writing, but one of the biggest criticisms I've seen for this story is the writing.
Yeah, okay. The writing is not terrible, but it's not the best. But I think that there's definitely a lot of like missed opportunities, particularly when that very sort of like chilling scene where they're starting to unwrap, the bandages.
I think they should have drawn that out a bit more and kind of give it a bit more tension-filled atmosphere.
I think so, but
I think I tried to do that, but I'm not sure if I quite pulled it off.
Yeah.
I guess comment down below and if I did.
Yeah, the point that I want to get to is that like there's just like a missed opportunity to really put some just better descriptors. Like, his lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. You could follow that up with something like,
I was wondering if instead of red, it's like crimson red. Although is crimson the deep red on my...
Yeah. So you could put, crimson red, but then crimson red like, and then something that is crimson red. So you've got that sort of physical... So it could be like his lips were burnt to a deep shade of red.
Although deep shade of crimson red, I don't think would roll off as well as red.
But so it's not necessarily, like the type of red that I'm trying to get to. It's more like red like, the stains left in his sort of shirt after being sort of beat up or something like that, giving you a little bit more. So like his face was turned into a pure white color, like adding something else into after that to represent the white color.
Like what I would say, like white as snow or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like that. it doesn't have to be snow, but it could be something that's, got something a bit more tangible, because like pure white, your pure white could be different to my pure white. So having something that is a bit more tangible.
For me, pure white's just pure white.
But I mean, other people, people are different. So, and his hair, singed from a brown
I know what's
to a
pure
black.
white. Nose candy.
But singed from a brown to a black as well. So you could, black as night. That's a very cliche one, but it works really well. I think just some missed opportunities to really enhance the writing. Other than that, as I said, the dialogue's not perfect, but there's definitely character to the characters through the.
And I think that's one thing it does differently from what the other ones we've covered.
Yeah.
Which you brought up kind of earlier.
Yeah, like the characters in previous ones do seem much more sort of single-sided characters. They're not quite three-dimensional, where these ones definitely, there's a little bit more going on.
Well, I guess a lot of the characters of the other stories is just there kind of to, either beef up the body count or to, be...
Yeah. Yes. I definitely see the potential. I definitely see the potential in this one, and why it's so compelling to quite a wide sort of audience of people.
And I think that's actually probably the greatest strength of this creepypasta, is that out of all of them, it kind of appeals to a wider range than the others.
Yeah, because it's not like animal-based, or it's not like paranormal-based. I think, everyone has been bullied at some point in time, so you get a bit of like relatability and that sort of thing.
I've definitely had a few times where I've been bullied and I've kind of been like, I want to fucking murder these people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's a lot that you can.
Although I think I'm just deranged like that.
There's a lot.
I remember. I know this is probably a good example of probably why I need to go to the loony bin for a bit. But there's sometimes where there's like people who've like just slide me slightly, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking murder you. I don't say it to him, but it's like in my head.
Yeah, this is definitely, I think, the best creepypasta I've read so far. But obviously, the pool so far is quite shallow, so it's not a big list to go off of. But it's not bad. So I am definitely interested to see where the
reboot, I guess,
the reboot
slash remake.
Yeah, the rebate kind of goes where
rebate.
The rebate.
Yeah, you sound like you said rebate there. Yes, the Jeff the Killer rebate.
Yeah. 2 for the price of 1. Yeah, where it takes it, where it sort of like expands on it a bit, because we've already seen like the reading time is longer on the reboot as well. So I hope it sort of does improve on some of the shortcomings of the original. So do you have any final thoughts on the original before we move over?
It's definitely kind of, I haven't read this in a while, but kind of reading back through it, it definitely brings back some memories. Not only that, but I can kind of still see where some of the people are coming from, even though I don't like completely agree with them on some of the issues. I was like, yeah, you have a point there, but those points you're making are not really a strong enough argument to kind of be like, oh, this is like overrated, or even hate it with such vitriol.
Yeah.
To take it like wipe the original story basically off the face of the internet, which good luck to them if they wanted to really do that. Especially something as popular as this.
Yeah, it's definitely seems overkill to try and wipe it off the face of the earth.
Or at least make it so it's harder to get access to it.
Yeah.
And easier to get access to the reboot.
Yeah.
I think they're originally going to pass the reboot off as the original from what I heard, but I'm not 100% sure. Or just to replace the original, period.
That seems a bit extreme. Because it's good to have the original because, so that we can do things like this, do these comparisons and see how the story has progressed.
Well, if that's the case, that means Sonic.exe is going to be interesting, because I think there's the original and then there's one that I think the name's changed differently, but it's basically just like a different, the exact same story, but tweaked because of certain reasons. Like, I think it's nothing to do with the story itself, but the author from what I remember reading, but...
okay. Right.
I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on it.
Fair enough.
Before we kind of move on to the reboot, if you do enjoy us covering this, and if there's any like fan-made or like spin-offs of the Jeff the Killer story, send them in and we'll probably do like a video where we cover a few of them.
Yeah.
Or a few that we find interesting. There's one that I remember hearing being narrated a long time ago, so I'll have to try and see if I can dig it up in written form
Yeah.
to cover it. I think it was like, what, Jeff the Killer versus one of the spin-off Jeff the Killers. Or one of the
okay.
Jeff the Killer clones, which is Jane the Killer, which is the best way to describe that was like the original Jane the Killer story was basically like just gender bent Jeff the Killer. So basically just make Jeff a female.
Yeah, okay.
But I think I'm just simplifying the story at that point, but that's what it's generally described as. So if you even want Jane the Killer to get covered, let us know down below. Should we rate it now or should we later on so we do the reboot?
Actually, let's rate it now.
So I'll let you go first and see.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go a pretty solid 7.5. Just because, it's it definitely has a lot of potential. Definitely, the best story so far that I've read from the creepypastas. So
fuck you. I was going to go with like a 7-ish, but I'm going to have to go with an 8. But I think that's more kind of the nostalgia talking. Like, it's aged well in some parts and others, not so well. And it has your typical problem that creepypastas of this vintage kind of have. But other than that, it's actually a pretty great story. Although I feel like I'm going to I think we'll probably cop a few negative comments just because there are some people out there that I think kind of just making their life goals just to hate on the original story.
Yeah.
Although that's the sentiment I've gotten from some people. Oh, that's the name of our channel. Roll credits.
I think it's very valid, to add in a nostalgic point or a half point.
Yeah, well, I guess isn't nostalgia one of the most powerful drugs out there?
All right. We're ready to move on to...
So you want to narrate the reboot?
I'll give it a go. The day Jeffrey Woods and his family arrived at their new home, the sky was overcast and the weather was muggy. The grey skies seemed to punctuate his mood. Jeff was not thrilled to be here. Their new home was beautiful though, a true example of his father's newfound success. But still, it wasn't the home he'd known. A week after they'd settled in, Jeff and Lou woke up early. The sky was a crisp and gorgeous blue, and although the Louisiana heat was playing its usual cruel tricks, the brothers decided that a morning bike ride to explore the area would be just the right ticket to combat the slight pangs of homesickness that they'd both been experiencing over the last week. "I miss home," Lou blurted out, as Jeff was smearing salsa on the microwaved burrito that would serve as his breakfast. "Me too, Lou, but I guess this is home now, so we just sort of have to make the most of it." "I know, but all of our friends and stuff are back in New Orleans. Remember that building we'd always sneak up on top of and watch the city lights come on? I miss that," Lou responded, sounding down. "Yeah, and the ZM video. The owner knew us and would always let us rent R-rated movies without our parents. And he'd always hook us up with a free video game rental if we got a few movies. Yeah, I miss that too. But Lou Lou interrupted. "I know we have to make the most of this, but still, this place just seems so fake, and Mum and Dad still treat us like we aren't even here." "Yep, they do. I was sort of hoping the new house would improve their mood, but what can we do?" Lou had no answer. Jeff finished his breakfast and the two boys left the house to mount their bikes and explore around a bit more. As it turned out, the subdivision they moved into was rather close to a cluster of stores in a small shopping centre. Village Shopping Centre was the name of a short row of businesses. Within these were a Pizza Hut, a Chinese restaurant, a tobacco store, a Sprint store, and what Jeff and Lou were most excited about, a video store. "We'll have to get Mum or Dad to come down here and open up an account so we can rent movies," Lou mentioned as Jeff flipped a box over to read the description of a horror movie. "Shit, you're right," Jeff snapped, feeling a bit of frustration at this thought. He knew getting his parents to actually come down here and set up a membership would take forever, since their usual after-work routine was to go off into separate rooms until they got hungry enough to come out and speak. Jeff glanced over at the girl working behind the counter. "Maybe I can go over there and sweet-talk her into giving us accounts," he joked. "Yeah, right, Jeff. One look at you and she'll probably ban us," Lou remarked back, a smile broad on his face. "You doubt me, little man?" "Doubt you? The guy who's kissed 2 girls and almost touched a boob? Never. Please go on over there and lay on all the charm. Whatever. I totally could have banged that girl, but her parents came home and last time you told me that story, you said her parents were out of town and her sister came home. Jeff became flustered, and while in the process of trying to make yet another comeback, the girl behind the register removed all doubt by speaking to the boys herself. "Hey, aren't those your bikes?" the young woman asked, pointing towards the glass window. Jeff and Lou looked over and saw 3 boys outside, 2 of which were riding around in circles on the Woods brothers' bikes. They would spin them around and then jump off, letting the bikes crash onto the pavement, just to stand them up and ride them again. The 2 boys riding the bikes were both slim in build, while a heavier boy stood on the sidewalk, drinking a Red Bull and watching. Jeff and his brother made their way towards the doors of the video store when the fat kids saw them coming. Jeff couldn't hear what he said to his 2 friends, but he made some sort of gesture while shouting. The other 2 boys dumped the bikes where they lay and walked towards the sidewalk, directly towards the 2 brothers. "Those your bikes?" one of the boys asked as Jeff and Lou entered the summer heat. "Yeah, why are you riding them?" Lou asked sharply. "We just saw them there, man. Relax. Figured someone just left them out for us." The same boy responded as his 2 friends joined him on either side. Jeff, determined to make a good start here, tried to change the course of this confrontation. "Well, they're ours. We just moved here about a week ago. We live over on Fairmount Avenue, a few blocks from here. We were just checking out the neighborhood." Jeff hoped that a civil tone could turn things around, but he could tell by the insolent look on the kid's face that this was a difficult gamble. "Good for you, you moved somewhere," the fat kid remarked. "Oh yeah, Troy," the first boy spoke. "They moved into that piece of shit house with the gravel driveway. I was wondering who would move into that place. Well, Randy, now we know," the big kid, apparently named Troy, replied. Jeff, still trying to salvage the conversation, tried peaceful banter one more time. "Okay, so you're Troy and you're Randy. Well, I'm Jeff, and this is my brother Lou. We just moved here from New Orleans." "You ain't in New Orleans now," the third boy, who just now decided to speak, remarked. "Yeah, and who the fuck said you could call us by our names?" Randy asked, that insolent, privileged smile never leaving his face. Jeff smiled and responded to Randy. "Well, I guess I could have called you a fucking asshole, but I figured I would give you the benefit of the doubt." In that moment, a flare of rage replaced the smirk that had rested on Randy's face throughout this entire exchange. The 2 boys, Troy and the still unknown third member of his band, seemed to be momentarily stuck silent. Perhaps they weren't used to being stood up to. "And you, quiet boy. We know this isn't New Orleans," Jeff stated to the slim kid that had reminded him of his geographical locations. "Because if this was New Orleans, you 3 already would have gotten your asses kicked for touching someone else's shit." The slim kid looked back and forth at his 2 friends. However, Randy, clearly the leader, seemed to know what to say. "Keith, you gonna let this little bitch talk to you like that?" Jeff knew this part, and while he wanted quite badly to sock Randy and his pals around, a real concern suddenly invaded his mind. If he and Lou got into a fight on their first week in this new neighborhood, their parents would freak. He could particularly hear it now, and while things had been far from perfect in their home, even after the move, there was a peace that had fallen over the family, and Jeff, fighting his urges, decided to do his best to keep it. Jeff looked over the 3, very well dressed, very privileged looking suburban kids before them, and dismissed them. "You guys are boring. Come on, Lou. Let them continue their play dates without us." Lou laughed, and at that he followed behind his brother towards the bikes. However, Randy and his little gang of would-be toughs would have none of that. They moved to block Jeff and his brother once again. "Where you going, pussy?" Randy asked, shoving Jeff. Jeff could tell that the shove had no real conviction. Randy was trying to figure him out, seeing where his buttons were. He'd push harder eventually, but Jeff swallowed the slowly building anger within him once more. Lou took a bit more exception to the shove. "We're going to your mum's house. Me and my brother saved up a couple of dollars from doing chores, and we hear she doesn't charge much." As the words left Lou's mouth, Randy appeared to only register a small portion of it all. Randy Hayden had grown up in Mandeville. His father was a partner at a local firm that made a lot of money, something else that Jeff would soon come to learn. Randy and his friends, while the same age as Jeff, had grown up in very different circumstances. They were used to being listened to. They were used to being feared. In fact, Randy, the target of the insult, just stood there. It was actually Troy, the fat kid, who stepped forward, fist balled, eyes squinted in anger. "Who are you talking to?" Troy shouted and took a wild swing at Lou. Lou, who was both in better shape and had sparred with Jeff a time or two during his time spent boxing, was able to avoid the punch, but just barely. Had that been all, it may have once again ended there. Troy was clearly taken by surprise at Lou's speed and actually didn't attempt another punch. However, these were bullies, kids that ran in a pack for a reason. The skinny one, Keith, stepped around and threw a punch that connected with the left side of Lou's face. Jeff had seen enough. He'd been shocked at how quickly this evolved into blows, even though he'd expected it from almost the start. When he'd first met Randy and his friends, he'd been curious. From there, he'd developed an annoyance with them, and slowly that annoyance had evolved into anger. However, upon seeing Lou punched, seeing that small trickle of blood form on his brother's lower lip, upon seeing the smug look of satisfaction on Keith's face, that anger that Jeff felt suddenly exploded into a rage that he'd never felt before in his life. Jeff Woods did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his feet automatically falling into the correct stance that he'd learned from the boxing classes his father once enrolled him into, and delivered a powerful right hand to Keith's face. The skinny boy had no time to register shock or pain. The punch caught him by surprise and his knees buckled. Keith went down to the ground in a heap of confusion and dawning fear. Randy, the so-called leader here, was almost too shocked to move. He'd had quite a lot of experience starting fights, but no real time logged in losing them. He'd never felt control of a situation slip. He was used to being in charge, so now seeing one of his friends go down so quickly and easily left him in a state of shock that he had no idea how to address. Troy, on the other hand, seemed to have a plan. Throw another punch, he moved towards Jeff deceptively fast than his weight would seem to allow, and threw two equally fast punches. Jeff, however, had no problem sidestepping both attempts. Troy seemed lost for actions, actually dropped his arms as if to say, "Gee, what do I do now?" Jeff had the answer. He moved in, throwing 3 hooks to Troy's stomach. The hefty kid's eyes went as wide as pie pans. A fitting analogy, Jeff thought. He staggered back, clutching his throbbing stomach. Jeff wasted no time and stepped in once more, fetching a sharp punch to the big kid's jaw, causing Troy to promptly fall on his ass. Jeff was reminded of King Hippo from the Punch-Out game he used to play. He couldn't help but smile. Jeff now turned his focus on Randy. He advanced on the boy, feeling something new forming inside him. He still felt the anger, the rage actually, at the antics of these 3 assholes. They had the nerve to mess with their bikes, the nerve to insult 2 kids they'd never met before, and of course, the ultimate offense, touching his brother. However, mixed in with this rage was also a sweet, enjoyable pleasure. Not only was he kicking their asses, but he was loving every second of it. It was as though the joy of showing them up was perfectly blending with the rage he felt towards them. Together, it formed into a sadistic, controlled sense of power. That was until Lou stepped in front of him. "Jeff, stop, that's enough." "Why stop now, Lou? They wanted this," Jeff replied in a flat voice that Lou had never heard come from his brother's mouth. "She's calling the cops, look," Lou shouted again. And this time Jeff came back to reality long enough to listen. He glanced over at the video store clerk and saw her on the phone, talking frantically and pointing towards the parking lot. Suddenly, Jeff's strange, sadistic haze collapsed, and he regained his former self. "Fuck, let's go," he stated quickly, and he and Lou mounted their bikes and rode towards the parking lot exit. "Yeah, you better fucking run," Randy called behind them. Jeff and Lou paid no mind and pedaled away. A few blocks down the street, they dismounted their bikes and began to walk them together. At first, neither brother spoke, then Lou broke the silence. "Jeff, thank you for standing up for me back there. Thank you. Yeah, those guys were pieces of shit. They had it coming," Jeff replied, looking down at the streets as they walked. What happened? I've never seen you like that before." "Just defending myself, Lou. What was I supposed to do? Let them beat you up? I bet they go to our school. I bet we'll see them there and they won't forget this. Who cares? We didn't ask to move here. We didn't ask for any of this. Mum and Dad just wanted a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood, and we were along for the ride, whether we liked it or not. Think I give a shit what these rich asshole kids think of us?" Jeff stated and went back to looking at his feet. "Think we'll get in trouble?" Lou asked. "For what? Defending ourselves?" "Yeah, I guess you're right. They did start it," Lou answered, and to the brothers, the matter was closed. However, things were far from over. They found that the trouble they believed they'd escaped was in fact waiting for them at their front door. Jeff and Lou saw the police cars well before they arrived at their driveway. 2 cop cars, both parked in front of their house. Both of them felt the stomachs drop, as they well knew why the police were there. The brothers entered the living room to see their parents sitting on the couch, the 2 cops standing up, leaning on the wall, writing in their notebooks. "What did you 2 do?" Sheila practically screeched as the 2 boys entered the house. Lou, younger and less centered than Jeff, began to fall on the defensive. "Some kids tried to jump us down by that video store. They were messing with our bikes, and when we went outside, they got in our faces." "That's not the way we heard it," Matt Woods interjected, his voice firm and ripe with anger and dissatisfaction. "No, Dad, that's what happened," Jeff began to explain. "We were down at Friendly Video looking around the store when these 3 kids started riding around on our bikes. All we did was walk outside and the kids started talking trash to us, trying to provoke a fight. When we tried to leave, one of them punched Lou. Finally, one of the 2 cops spoke. His name tag read Williamson. "Boys, we have some serious complaints about the 2 of you. From what eyewitnesses at the shopping centre say, you 2 started the confrontation with Randy and his friends." Jeff took notice at how familiar the cop's tone was when he said Randy's name. This was a small town after all, and there was a good chance that this cop coached Randy in Little League or drank beers with his dad. Hell, it was even possible that this cop could be an uncle to one of the bullies. "No, sir," Jeff replied. "We didn't start it. They did. We just wanted our bikes. We just wanted to leave. They blocked us." Williamson continued, as though he'd heard nothing Jeff said. "Several witnesses, including the video store clerk, say that you swung first. They say that the boys were riding your bikes, but let me ask you this. Did you chain your bikes to anything, or did you just leave them outside the store?" "What's that matter?" Lou demanded. "Well, son, if you just left your bikes lying around in the street, you can't exactly blame Randy and his friends for riding them, now can you? It'd be different if you had secured them somehow, but you just left them there. Mum, Dad, you're not buying this crap, are you? You know me and Lou don't start fights. When have we ever? These 3 punks messed with us. And if you can't tell that these cops are taking their sides, then you need to open your eyes." Jeff knew he was skating on thin ice, but that rage, it demanded some sort of satisfaction. "Jeffrey, do not speak about these officers in that tone of voice, and do not speak to us that way either. Now, it's pretty obvious that you 2 aren't happy here, that you miss your old home. But starting fights in the street isn't going to change anything," Jeff's mother snapped back. "Listen, boys, you're lucky. None of the parents want to press charges. This will be reported as a simple scuffle between teenagers. But be advised, you're both on notice. This is a quiet town, not like New Orleans. We don't tolerate this sort of behavior over here. If you see Randy, Keith, or Troy, I highly suggest you tell them you're sorry. We'll be keeping an eye on both of you, so don't let this happen again. You don't want to have an arrest record, do you?" Jeff felt his anger bubble over, and he could not hold his tongue. "Who is he to you, Officer Williamson? Is Randy your nephew? Is he a friend's son? Or maybe you go over and screw his mum while you're on duty. Which one is it, officer? That's it. Both of you, go to your rooms." Matt Woods apparently found that he wasn't a mute after all, as he ordered his sons out of the room. Jeff and Lou walked up the stairs. However, they refused to hang their heads in shame or feel any regret. Neither of the parents spoke to them for the rest of that day. Jeff and Lou stayed upstairs, venting their shared frustration to each other. They'd been screwed over. Even at their young ages, they knew that. They took some solace in the fact that they at least hadn't been arrested or cited. But still, they saw what was really going on here. That cop, he was protecting Randy, Jeff whispered to his younger brother. No shit, his brother replied. We have to watch ourselves. We have to take care of each other. You saw it down there. Even our parents didn't stand up for us. Yeah, what the hell was up with that? Lou asked. Imagine, their fucking image. That's what's up with it. All they care about is fitting in here. They want to make sure they blend in with the rest of the Stepford families. No more fighting. If we see Randy or his two fuckhead friends again, we just walk away, okay? But Jeff, you can kick the shit out of them. Why would we walk away? Lou asked. Because I can't kick the shit out of the cops, Lou. I can't kick the shit out of Mum and Dad, and that's what would get us. Fucking Randy and his pals are protected here. You and me, we're not. So if we see them, just avoid them, okay? Please? Lou nodded. I feel like a little bitch though. I owe Keith for hitting me. No, you don't. I paid him back for that, and paid his fat friend too. I hope they just leave us alone now, Jeff sighed. Jeff and Lou didn't hear from their parents for the rest of that day. They remained in their rooms late into the night and finally came down to eat after they were sure their folks had gone to bed. Lou said that he felt relieved about that, but Jeff had a sinking feeling that the worst was yet to come. Jeff was correct. The next morning, when the two brothers came downstairs together to eat breakfast, their parents were already sitting at the dining room table, staring at the boys, approving of nothing they saw. Sit down, Matt stated flatly. What's going on? Lou asked. Sit down, Matt stated again, anger dancing on the words. The boys complied without further question. Matt Woods began his diatribe. Whatever that was yesterday, beating up some kids for touching your bikes, mouthing off at the police, disrespecting both me and your mother, that stops today. We didn't beat anyone up for touching our bikes, Jeff blurted. Shut up, Jeff. This is a one-way conversation, his father barked. That kid, Randy Hayden, his father is a partner at my firm. Did you know that? Did you even think about that when you were assaulting him over your godforsaken bike? You just didn't think, did you, Jeff? Sheila added. How could I have known that? Matt continued. Well, I've spent the entire morning talking to his father on the phone. His dad is willing to let it all go, but shit, son, I have to deal with that at work now. Do you have any idea how much damage this could have done to me, to our family? Jeff felt that rage coming back and fought with all his might to keep it stifled. Instead, he once more tried to appeal to the two adults' parental side. Mum, look at Lou's face. They split his lip. Can't you see? It's still swollen. Lou turned his head to better showcase the injury. My God, Jeff. So some kid played a little rough with your brother. Is that any reason to fight them? I wanted to make friends with some of the other families in this neighborhood, but thanks to you, I just don't know. No sooner could Jeff or his brother construct a proper defense than their father began speaking again. So, your mother and I have talked this through. Since there are only a couple of weeks of summer vacation left, we've decided that Lou should spend the rest of the season at Aunt Marcy's place. We've already spoken to her, and she's willing to let him come out there and stay. Both Jeff and Lou were floored by this decision. Both boys began to protest at the same time, but they saw the look on their parents' faces. The decision was made. Why can't we both just go then? Jeff asked, a last-ditch effort to at least get away from his parents. Marcy doesn't want both of you there. She says you two are too rambunctious. And frankly, we agree, Sheila answered. Lou was shuttled off to his aunt's place in Abita Springs, Louisiana, a place even smaller and duller than Mandeville, if one can believe that. Jeff watched his brother leave and then walked back to his bedroom. He felt that rage, however, it began to feel almost pleasant to him. He couldn't explain it. He was furious at this turn of events. His parents had turned their backs on their own children. However, through it all, these new feelings he was experiencing weren't all terrible. This anger, for example, he could almost taste it. It felt like thick, sweet syrup stirring around in him. Of course, he knew the extra ingredient that would complete the flavour, that satisfying joy he'd felt when he had Randy and his friends on the ropes the day prior. That mixed perfectly with the anger to create some intoxicating product that Jeff almost craved now. He fell asleep lying on his bed thinking about that syrup, that thick, viscous, that seemed to work its way into the very fabric of his soul. He wanted it, yet he knew that it was destructive and that nothing good could come from sampling it again. Several days passed and tensions were high between Jeff and his parents. Without Lou around, there was nothing for him to do except sit in his room and play video games. He went outside but didn't venture far from home. He knew if Randy and his goons showed up again, it would likely result in another fight. For a few days that worked well, and Jeff believed he could get through this. However, his mother changed all of that on an early Saturday morning. Jeff was awoken suddenly by sharp sunlight striking his face. He heard his mother humming something that she rarely did. Even in his half-sleeping state, he knew that humming was forced. She was doing it to wake him up, and figured the added sunlight would get things there even faster. When she noticed Jeff's eyes cracking open, she sauntered over to his bed and began speaking in a tone that simply oozed false joviality. At first, Jeff had refused. Could his mother be serious? Did she really expect him to go over and make friends with Randy? He was still in bed when his mother stopped her incessant humming long enough to tell him to get up and get dressed. Once he learned why, he'd told her no. No way in hell. However, his mother was a shrewd manipulator, and she'd know exactly what would get the job done. She promised Jeff that if he did this for her, went over and made it work with Randy, that Lou could come home the next day. She'd sandbagged Jeff right into the corner with that one. He'd no choice but to agree. A shorter time later, Jeff and his mother were pulling into Randy's driveway. Randy's mother answered the door. "Hi, you must be Jeff," she greeted. Jeff smiled wanly and confirmed that was in fact who he was. "Hello, I'm Sheila Woods. Nice to finally meet you in person," Jeff's mother announced, barging past her son and extending a hand to Randy's mother. "Sheila, so pleasant to meet you. I'm Bridget Hayden. Sorry to hear that our boys had a little mishap the other day. You know how it is though with teenagers, hormones going crazy and all that. Randy never gets into fights, but he explained to me that Jeff and his brother are still new to the area and haven't quite learned how we do things in Manville yet. Isn't that right, Jeff?" Jeff couldn't resist a small jab. "Yeah, sorry about that, Miss Hayden. Me and Lou had no idea that it was okay for your son and his friends to mess with our bikes without asking. Bridget, he gets that mouth from his father. Never knows when to shut up. How about you and I go in and have some coffee and you can tell me all the great gossip around Manville while our boys get to know each other the right way. Randy is in his room, Jeff. Upstairs, second floor to your left. I'm sure you'll hear the sound of his video games or something," Bridget stated with very little humour to her voice. "Thank you, ma'am," Jeff answered and entered the house. Jeff knocked and heard Randy answer with, "Come in." "Hey, so I guess you heard. Our parents want us to hang out, get to know each other," Jeff stated with little conviction. "Yeah, that's my mum, all right. She doesn't like drama. Honestly, I think she worries too much. I mean, I'm cool if you're cool." Jeff sat down on the floor next to Randy and struck up a conversation. "So, turns out your dad is my dad's boss. He freaked out about the fight in the parking lot. He was actually worried that he'd get fired or something. My dad is like everyone's boss. I fucking hate it. I think half the kids at my school talk to me because their parents are somehow connected to my dad's firm." "Why do you hate it?" Jeff asked. "Because it's fake. This whole damn town is fake. You'll figure it out as you go, but trust me, everyone who lives here is just trying to pretend they're something else. My parents make me do all this shit, all the trophies and stuff, just so they can brag about it. That's it." Jeff smiled. "I know how you feel. My dad had me in boxing class a year ago because some co-worker of his had a brother that worked at the place or something. As soon as that guy quit though, I was out of that gym the next week. I wish it was that easy, Randy responded. I hate playing baseball, but my dad will sure have me out there again next summer. And the summer afterwards, it's like he knows I hate it, but wants to make sure I'm out there with his stupid company name on the back of my jersey. Randy, why did you and your friends fuck with our bikes the other day? I told you, this town is fake and boring as shit. There's nothing to do here. We have to find stuff to do. I mean, there are only so many times you can go hang out at the video store or ride the dirt paths in the woods. All the girls here are stuck up. All the stores close early, there's no mall, and the movie theater is across town. We were just bored, man. So, sorry for that, I guess. It's cool, Jeff replied. I guess I'm sorry too. Things went too far. You mean the fight? Randy asked. That shit was actually cool. Those guys, Keith and Troy, they just leech on because of my dad. It's like I told you, I'm pretty sure their parents make them hang out with me. The afternoon went on, and Jeff soon forgot that this was a mandatory arrangement. He actually started to find himself liking Randy. Sure, their first encounter was a little sketchy, but he was coming around to the guy, finding that he wasn't so bad once his idiot friends were removed from the equation. About an hour later, things took a new turn. Jeff heard the twin pops of 2 car doors shutting in near unison, and then heard the engine start up. He dropped the game controller and peered out of Randy's bedroom window, just in time to see his mother and Randy's mother backing out of the driveway. Our parents are leaving, Jeff said. About time. I figured my mum would eventually talk your mum into going shopping or going to get coffee or something like that. Jeff heard Randy pause the game. Hey Jeff, come downstairs. I want to show you some cool stuff. Randy invited and Jeff followed. Randy led Jeff out to the garage. It was hot in there, with the main door shut. The garage was well kept though, and Jeff observed stacks of magazines underneath a workbench, as well as tools and various other utility items stacked about. Standing in the small, closed-in garage, with the late summer heat lingering about, Jeff began to feel a bit uneasy. Despite the fact that he and Randy had seemed to bond over the last few hours, Jeff couldn't ignore a sense that things were different now the adults were gone. What did you want to show me? Jeff asked. Hold on. Let me get it, Randy replied, moving the magazines out to reveal a small red box. Jeff watched as Randy removed the box and opened it. Check it out. My dad's flare gun, Randy announced and waved the red tubular gun about. Whoa, be careful with that, Jeff shouted, more out of shock than real concern. It's fine, dude. Don't be a pussy. It's not even loaded, Randy said. However, Jeff watched as he fished one of the flares out of a back compartment. Randy then continued to fiddle with the flare gun, popping it open and loading a flare. Now it's loaded, he announced. My dad showed me how to use this last year when we went out boating. Sometimes I take it out back and shoot flares at the trees, but maybe this time I don't need a tree. The change in Randy's voice and demeanor was impossible to ignore. Okay, well, cool gun. Let's get back in the house though. It's hot out here. Plus, I'm getting hungry. What do you have to eat? However, as Jeff turned to walk through the small door leading back into the house, his path was suddenly blocked by 2 more familiar faces. Where you going, Jeffy? The fat kid Troy blurted out as he and Keith stepped forward into the garage. Took you 2 assholes long enough to get here. I've had to babysit this faggot all day. Randy shouted. A wicked joy was present in his words. Sorry, Randy, but Keith here had to mow his front yard before his parents would let him come out, Troy said, a sheepish tone to his voice. It's cool, we're here now, Keith said. What the fuck is going on? Jeff asked, staring at Randy. He noticed that Randy still had the flare gun in his hands. I'll tell you what's going on, Jeff. You owe Keith and Troy an apology for what you did. You sucker punched them and then ran away. You didn't even have the balls to fight them fair. So now you're going to pay them what you owe. I'm not going to fight you, okay? I'm done with that shit, Jeff replied as he glanced about the room for an exit. You're right about that. You're not going to fight. You're going to stand there and let my boys get their licks in. Then I get mine. And when that's done, you get the fuck out of my house. I'll tell my mum that you got sick and walked home. And after that, if you see us again, you better walk the other way. I'm not gonna stand here and get hit by you or your friends. So just let me go home. How about that? I'll tell my mum that we're cool and everyone wins, okay? Jeff asked. Randy then raised the flare gun towards Jeff. No, you stay, pussy. You stay and take your licks. Jeff felt that sensation once more, that sick, rich, dark matter that swirled about inside of him. He could taste it now. It was heaven. In his mind, he imagined himself diving into it, swimming in it, letting it swallow him whole. He looked around and the sensation only grew. He saw Randy standing there holding the flare gun. It was limp in his hands though, and the hammer was not cocked back. Jeff knew that Randy had no intention of firing it. He looked over at Keith, skinny and pathetic, a kid born to follow. Troy, fat and sweaty, breathing a bit heavy from his walk over, and of course, in the middle of it all, Jeff himself. He felt that pleasure begin to mix with the rage, forming the perfect product. He tried to avoid sampling it. He knew that only a regret would come from indulging in it. However, when it was placed so close, when the aroma and the promise of that sweet, savory flavor was only inches away, Jeff found that he could no more to stand against it than a ship in the ocean could stand against a typhoon. Jeff began to smile. Why are you smiling at me? You queer for me or something? Randy asked, a slight nervous tinge in his voice. Am I smiling, Randy? I guess it's because I'm just having so much fun, Jeff announced and suddenly lunged towards the unprepared kid holding the flare gun. Jeff struck Randy once in the nose. Randy's arms dropped, yet he kept hold of the flare gun. Jeff, without even needing to look, realized that Troy and Keith had actually taken a step back instead of advancing as they should have. Jeff delivered another strong blow to Randy's jaw, causing the boy to drop to the floor. Jeff now turned his attention to Troy and Keith, the two tough kids that had yet to actually make so much as a move in his direction. Troy actually backed up a step and stumbled over the stack of magazines that Randy had moved earlier. Jeff took this opportunity and stepped forward, once again introducing Troy's round belly to his fist. Troy tried to stay on his feet, but Jeff's punches, combined with the stumble over the magazines, caused Troy to fall back, landing hard and striking his head on the concrete slab that was the garage's floor. Keith was actually trying to back away. However, Jeff was currently standing between him and the only exit to the garage, since the carport door was closed. Jeff took 2 quick steps towards the skinny kid and felt the most intense joy at seeing Keith stagger backwards, knocking his back into the wall. That perfect blend of pleasure, control, and rage had come together. Jeff felt as though he was floating above the world. Somewhere in his mind, he knew there would be hell to pay for this. But at that exact moment in time, he couldn't care less. He couldn't care about Lou, he didn't care about being arrested, and he didn't care if his dad got fired. All he cared about in that fraction of time was hurting Keith. Keith tried to make a run for it, hoping to squeeze through the small gap between Jeff and the door. However, Jeff clipped him a hard right hand to his face, causing Keith to stagger back again. Jeff could see that his knees were buckling and took full advantage. He moved in, pinning Keith to the wall, and began to deliver blow after blow to the skinny kid's stomach. Keith's eyes became as large as saucers. Once satisfied, Jeff stepped back and watched in demonic glee as Keith slowly slid down the wall, grasping for air. Randy got back to his feet, but seemed to have no idea what to do. We done now, Randy? We good? Or do you and your friends need more? Jeff mocked. No more. We're cool. How about you assholes? Jeff asked. It was Randy's idea, Keith said weakly. Yeah, man. We didn't even want to, Troy agreed. The debate may have continued, but the sound of a returning car broke the tension. Oh shit, my mum is back, Randy shouted, his voice cracking in a humorous way. It seemed that the previous tough guy had all but shrunk back into a scared child. So we'll just say that we were hanging out, Keith replied. No, the fucking flare gun. If she finds out I messed with it, I'm screwed. So put it back, Jeff suggested. That sensation of rage was fading again, and he felt control returning. Yeah, grab the magazines. please, Randy begged. Jeff found that he rather liked that tone, that begging, whipped dog mentality. Jeff was paying no attention to Randy. He was down on the floor, calmly gathering the magazines. He didn't really care if Randy got in trouble or not. However, if his mother returned and found trouble, he feared that Lou may not be able to return home as promised. Everything else happened in a flash, both literally and figuratively. Randy, now in a panic over the trouble he'd be in if he was caught playing with the flare gun, had begun to sweat. As his hands frantically clawed over the gun, his thumbs pushed the hammer back, unintentionally. He didn't even notice that the gun was cocked. He was turning it over in his hands, trying to quickly disarm it. He then heard the sound of the keys in the front door. He knew that he had only seconds now to hide it. Everything else happened in slow motion. The gun slipped from Randy's sweaty hands as he attempted to rotate it once more. He saw it fall into the floor, seeming to float to the ground, rather than fall. Jeff, busy stacking the magazines, had only enough time to register Randy's shocked gasp. He turned to look in the boy's direction, just in time to see the bright red flare gun hit the floor. The gun discharged, launching a speeding ball of fire directly into Jeff's face. Jeff felt the hot flash of heat and pain tear across the left side of his face. After the initial registry of agony, there was no more thinking. Jeff began to scream, clutching the left side of his face and rolling around on the floor. For a while, he forgot everything, as he was plunged into that dark, rich syrup once more, the rage almost serving to dull the pain. When he finally did come to a stable level of alertness, he realized he was in a hospital room. Half of his face was bandaged. He knew that much. He wanted to open his eyes and speak, let his family know he was awake, but the drugs still had a firm hold. He was awake, but not quite yet functioning. He could hear several familiar voices though. "Is he going to be okay, doctor?" Jeff's mother asked. "Oh, yes, ma'am. Your son will be fine. However, he will have a lengthy road to recovery and will need your support." The flare struck his face and caused third-degree burns on his left side. "How bad is the eye?" Jeff's father asked. "Hard to say at this point. He'll need to see an optometrist for further review, but the damage appears quite severe." "And his face? What about his face?" Jeff's mother asked, sounding deeply concerned. "Well, we were able to clean and treat the injury in time, so you've no concern for infection or anything of that matter. We'll want him on antibiotics for a while, and he'll need to have the wound cleaned and dressed on a regular basis. But all in all, your son got very lucky. The damage could have been more severe." "Doctor," his mother began again, "what if there is permanent damage? What do we do about that?" "As I said, an optometrist will have to examine the eye." Sheila Woods interrupted the doctor, sounding more agitated than before. "You're not listening. Not the eye, his face. What do we do to correct the face?" she demanded. "Well, ma'am, we have treated his face. Like I said, there shouldn't be a risk of infection so long as you..." She cut him off again. "Not the infection, his appearance. What can we do for that?" "Miss Woods, that's hardly a concern at this point. Once he is healed and back on his feet, you can possibly explore plastic surgery to repair some of the damage. But honestly, right now we can't waste concern on how he looks. What is more important is that your son is healthy. He can expect to be back home in a few days, maybe sooner." Jeff's dad spoke again. "Okay, thank you, doctor. Can we have some time alone, please? My wife and I need to speak." "Certainly," the doctor replied. "Lou, why don't you go down to the hospital cafeteria and get yourself a snack?" Matt Woods suggested. "But I want to be here in case Jeff wakes up," Lou replied. "Lou, they told us that Jeff is heavily medicated. They don't expect him to wake up any time tonight, so just go, and if he does come around, we'll have you paged," Matt replied. Jeff heard the door open and close as Lou exited. His parents both let out a long, shaky sigh, but Jeff was starting to believe it was not a sigh of relief, but rather one of stress. "We're going to have to homeschool him now, Matt. That's just what it's going to be. We're going to have to keep him home." He heard his mother rant, her voice sounding frantic. "What? I mean, he probably won't be able to start school right on time, but I doubt he'll miss a whole year," his father responded, trying to maintain a calmer voice. "I'm not talking about that, Matt. I'm not worried about him missing a week or two of school. I mean, his face, Matt. You heard what the doctor said. His face is going to be disfigured, Sheila argued back. We don't even know the full extent of the damage yet, Sheila. It could be minor. It could possibly heal. And you heard what he said. Plastic surgery could be an option in time. In time? What kind of time? A year? 2 years? And what about in the meantime? People are going to see him and they're going to talk. Is that what you want? He's going to be a pariah. You think anyone is going to have him around their kids? Jeff was hearing all of this, just letting it soak in, slowly. As his mind absorbed the words, he felt that rage return. Sick, rich, dark. That syrup of raw, primal emotion. He wanted to scream at his mother, to tell her to shut up, that he was the one lying here, half his face burned, blind in one eye, all thanks to her forcing him to go over to Randy's house. He wanted to ask her why she left, why she went off to go shopping, or have her nails done, or whatever it was that she did. He wanted to know why she'd leave him alone with a kid who just days before tried to jump him and his brother. He wanted to know how she could care more about his parents than the fact that he was lying in the hospital. However, there was still so much more that he wanted to know as well. He wanted to know how much more his mother hated him, how much more she saw him now as how did she put it? A pariah. He wanted to continue to swim in the thick pool of dark hatred that was starting to form from the rage and anger. That was a new one now. Before it was anger, then it was anger mixed with pleasure, but now it was anger mixed with hatred. And while he certainly longed to be free of it, while he most certainly preferred the false sense of love and concern he believed he'd heard from her before, he also wanted to test it out a bit more. He also began to wonder, how well would this new recipe blend with pleasure? How would it feel? Matt Woods began to speak again. I just can't believe he shot himself in the face with a flare gun. I always thought Jeff was more responsible than that. Don't even get me started on that, Sheila replied. I couldn't believe it when Randy and his friends explained it to the medics and police how it all happened. Randy was just trying to show Jeff around his house and wanted to show him the collection of magazines his dad kept in the garage. You know, boys, probably hoping that a couple of Playboys would be in there or something. Then he said Jeff found the box containing the flare gun and just wouldn't stop playing around with it. You should have heard those other boys, Matt. They told me that they practically begged Jeff just to put it down before he got hurt, but he just had to show off. I just don't know where we went wrong with Matt. I thought us moving out here to a nice, quiet neighborhood would make everyone happy. Jeff, though, he just wants to fight us on everything. And while all that came together in Jeff's mind, he continued to swim in that black ichor of hatred and rage. The morphine drip added a nice touch of euphoria. Jeff could almost see himself, plunged into the syrupy waters of hatred, and emerging changed. Each dip brought him so much twisted pleasure. And that was when he finally understood. He could sample the pleasure now, not because he was enjoying what was happening, but because he knew he could enjoy what was to come. Just as the doctor had predicted, Jeff was scheduled to go home a few days later. During his time at the hospital, he never asked to see his face. It wasn't until the last day that he finally asked for a mirror. The nurse had come in to change his bandages, as was the routine. She was a pleasant woman. She spoke to him, asked him how he was doing. He enjoyed her visits. So on the final day, when she arrived to clean and dress his face, he asked to see himself. Are you sure, sweetheart? Would you like me to call in your parents first? She asked. No, thank you, Jeff replied. I think I want to see it for myself first, without them standing over me. I understand, she replied honestly, without a hint of pretension. Once the bandages were off, she handed him a small hand mirror. Would you like me to step out of the room? She asked. Jeff ignored her and looked at himself, taking stock of the damage. Sure enough, his face was a mess. The entire left side at least. The flare struck him travelling upwards and burned a scar into the left cheek that extended to his eye. At first glance, it almost looked like he was smiling on that side. The scar was still bright red and burned tissue spread out on either side. Once it arrived at his eye, the news did not get any better. His eye was white, just a lifeless bulb plugged into his face. He closed his right eye and found that he could see nothing from his left eye at all. The scar continued up the left side of his forehead. The damage was less severe here, however. The hair on the left side of his head was burned off, leaving a few strands to stick up here and there. "Sorry, sweetie, but I have to put clean bandages on," she told him. Jeff smiled. "It's okay. There will be plenty of time for me to admire myself later." There was no joy from his parents on the ride home or upon arrival. They spoke very little, and there was a tension in the car that simply wouldn't fade out. As for Lou, he was thrilled that his brother was okay, but he didn't know what to say concerning the damage to his face. So after asking a few questions about the accident and the recovery, he fell silent as well. They walked into their home at dusk, and Lou asked about dinner. They suggested that they let Jeff pick a place to celebrate his return home. "Just go to sleep. Both of you boys, go to sleep," Sheila remarked. She and her husband both retreated to their bedrooms as well, to argue or feel sorry for themselves. Who knew? Jeff and Lou didn't speak much that night. Jeff spent most of the evening staring at himself in the mirror. He kept pulling back the bandages and looking at the scars. Lou wanted to see them too, but felt that it might be imprudent to ask. "I'm glad you're home, Jeff. I really missed you, and I'm glad you're okay," Lou said to Jeff as he stared at himself. "I'm not okay, Lou, and neither are you. None of us are really. There is a sickness here. The only difference is now my sickness shows on the outside as well," Jeff replied, his voice as flat as that on an answering machine. "What are you talking about?" Lou asked. "One day, you'll see it too. This is what happens though. This is what happens when it all falls down," Jeff said, still peeking behind his bandages. "Jeff, I don't know what you're trying to say," Lou responded. Jeff didn't reply though, and after several moments, Lou left him alone. Lou went down to his parents' bedroom and knocked on the door. "What is it?" the voice of his mother asked. "Mum, I think Jeff is acting weird. You may want to come talk to him." "Go away, Lou. Leave your mother alone," his father's voice answered. Lou, being young, had no other ideas, so he returned to his bedroom. He didn't know that those would be the last words he'd ever hear his parents speak to him. That night, Sheila and Matt Woods awoke together, both being light sleepers. It took little to bring them out of slumber. The sudden removal of their blanket, as it was snatched from the bed, did the trick just fine. They awoke to see a small light coming from the half bath that was situated in their master bedroom. The door was cracked only slightly, and the light source was weak. They could make out a human shape standing over their bed though. What is going on?" Sheila grumbled. As their vision came into focus, they realized their son was standing before them. Matt reached over and flipped on the lamp next to their bed. Jeff was standing there, his bandages off, his disfigured face beaming down on them, with a long kitchen knife clutched in his right hand. "What are you doing, son?" Matt asked, his mind still trying to shake out the cobwebs of sleep. "He's got a knife!" Sheila screamed, grabbing at her husband's arm. Matt kept his composure though. "Sheila, it's probably the painkillers. He's likely got up and got disorientated. Relax for Christ's sake." Jeff tilted his head to one side, still not speaking. He stared hard at his father, slowly bringing the knife up, ensuring that he saw it well. "Son, what are you doing?" Matt asked. Jeff replied, with no emotion in his voice. "Matt, do something," Sheila pleaded. "Okay, son, I realize you've been through a lot, but you need to go back to bed. I'm going to call the doctor in the morning and..." Jeff moved quickly across to his father's side of the bed, his head moving about, alternating between a normal-looking young man and the deformed ghoul that had been lurking in the shadows. "Okay, son, you've scared me. Is that what you wanted?" Matt asked, adjusting to the middle of the bed to put distance between himself and his son. "Good. Now I can start hurting you." Jeff spoke again, with no emotion. His father had time to utter a single syllable, most likely to ask another question, to try and reason with his son. Jeff, however, gave him time to do no more than that. He lunged into the bed, driving the knife into his father's stomach. Matt attempted to fend Jeff off, but the wound to his midsection rendered him into shock, and his arms fell to the side. Jeff could hear his mother screaming, but paid no mind. He wanted to finish with his father first. Jeff stabbed down into his stomach 3 more times, quickly. His father gasped and coughed up blood. His body jerked and twitched each time the knife found its mark. After the 3rd time, Matt Woods lay still. Sheila had backed up against the headboard of the bed. She wanted to climb down, make a run for it, but she'd balled herself up between the headboard and the end table. In her frantic state of terror and confusion, she couldn't figure out how to do something as simple as dismount a bed. "Jeff, why are you doing this to us?" she asked feebly. "Randy started it. You must have known that, but you ignored it. Lou had a busted lip. You must have seen that, but you ignored it. I was shot in the face with a flare gun, but you believed Randy. Why? So you could fit in?" Jeff asked in a low, almost growling voice. "No, baby, I believed you. It was just your father's job, and we were new here and... Oh God, Jeff, please." His mother begged. "Tell me about homeschool, Mum. Tell me about how you don't want to send me out in public because of my face. Tell me how none of the other kids will want to be my friend, and how none of the parents will want to be yours. Tell me about that, Mum. Tell me how nice it's going to be, you homeschooling me." "Jeff, please. I was just stressed. I was worried about you. That's all, please. I love you." "Mum, I think you should take your own advice. You know what you told Lou when we got home tonight? He wanted to do something nice, to welcome me home. And do you remember what you told us to do instead?" Jeff asked as he now crawled over, cornering his mother on the bed. "What did I say?" she asked, the question coming out barely a whisper. "Go to sleep." Jeff snarled and drove the knife into his mother's chest. He stabbed her over and over again, and as he did, he finally found that perfect recipe, that heavenly blend. That rage, hate, and pleasure all mixed into one perfect formula. And for a while, Jeff became lost in it all. Jeff opened his brother's bedroom door, not surprised to find his brother asleep. He had dozed off with headphones in, so he slept through all the shouting. That was fine with Jeff. It was easier that Lou not have to hear all of that. Jeff sat down on his brother's bed and nudged him slightly. It took a moment, but Lou finally opened his eyes and looked up. Jeff removed his earphones for him. "You're free now, Lou," he spoke softly. "Jeff, what are you talking about?" Lou mumbled, still half asleep. "You'll see in the morning. I just wanted to let you know I love you. You've been my best friend. Remember that, okay?" "Thanks, I love you too. Now let me get back to sleep," Lou replied, already dozing off again. Jeff smiled and stood up. As he left the room, he looked back at his sleeping brother one last time before he vanished into the night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Although I say that about everything. So, but this is genuinely interesting because I remember hearing bits and pieces of the new story, but now it's all like kind of sitting here and reading it as a whole. It's like, this is definitely very different to the original.
It is, yeah. I don't know. I know almost. I don't think you can kind of say that it's comparable because it is almost like a completely different story.
Oh yeah. Although it does keep a similar-esque structure.
Yeah.
Because you got the moving in,
yeah,
the initial confrontation, the brothers getting separated, then you have that final confrontation, the return of the brother, and then, the finale.
Yeah, yeah.
So it follows the same structure.
It definitely, it follows the same structure. You're definitely right there. Yeah, I don't want to have to compare the two just because they are so different and like both good in different ways. This was cool. I liked it. This was like a proper, I think this could actually get like printed. It feels a little bit more than a story on the internet. Sort of, it feels a bit more, I guess, professional.
A book,
yeah.
Well, considering I think it was like a competition.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it makes sense that the winning one would be a bit more of professional quality.
It does make a lot of sense if that is the case. So yeah, and it definitely had like a lot more of what I expected or sort of like what I wanted out of the original, at least. A bit more of that. What I was saying about describing things in a much deeper way. As for the actual like story, And so like the more gruesome parts, I kind of do prefer the original. Like I kind of liked the fact that, yeah, you know, like it's
Yeah, a kid got his skull cracked open by a fucking
Yeah.
curtain rod.
yeah,
Or like a rack rod.
yeah, and like, you know, it gets set on fire and it's the bleach that bleaches the skin.
And that's
Yeah.
another thing is like it kind of does dramatically change how Jeff the Killer looks. As I think you could see with the artwork for the one that was like the narration of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely changes the classic look of Jeff the Killer. So
Yeah, which it's obviously classic for a reason because it's just got that uncanny feel to it. And I like how the creepypasta goes out of its way to explain why he looks like that.
yeah, exactly. I think I guess yeah, if sort of like Joker is some of the influence of the original, this is definitely
Actually, I think you're probably onto something there.
yeah. And then you've sort of got like Two-Face here, where it's like, you know, half the face is still fairly intact, but the other half is that disfigured.
I think, yeah, you're onto something there. Although with a lot of early creepypastas, usually the creepypastas were usually based around the image associated with them.
Ah, right. That's interesting.
So that kind of sort of debunks your idea, but I wouldn't be surprised that if the Joker may have been some inspiration for the original image, maybe.
Potentially,
Which actually the kind of the story of the history of the Jeff the Killer image is quite interesting. Which I'm not sure if Lazy Masquerade did an entire video dedicated to it, or was a part of these typical style videos where he covers like kind of like finally solved like internet mysteries or like I can't remember the title of the actual video, but he was kind of covering like the kind of the mystery surrounding some of the iconic images on the internet, and he brought up like the recent kind of discoveries that was sort of made with the Jeff the Killer image.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Apparently coming from like it was originally believed it was like a kind of a tweaked image of a girl who decided to suicide.
Oh, okay.
Although that was debunked because actually there was evidence of it dating back further before that to I just tell you how old it was, like a Japanese web board.
Oh, okay.
Back like in the really early aughts.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. That, yeah. I guess, yeah.
Then it made its way around, and then eventually that image became, well, Jeff the Killer.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. The fact that, yeah, something like it goes from, this.
Like obscure message board to becoming one of the most iconic images of creepypastas and one of the most iconic creepypastas.
That's pretty cool.
I remember the story correct, unless there's some new developments.
Yeah, I guess,
that's the thing I like about that kind of field of research is that you got to really dig around and probably even have to make sense of use of the Wayback Machine or people that were around and on those boards at the time.
Absolutely. That's
which, considering it's a board that was probably region locked to Japan, this means
potentially, yeah,
the amount of like work you'd have to go to even be able to find the message board where the original image originated from, much less the original image.
Yeah, if it's even still up as well.
Yeah,
the
and
original message board. Yeah,
I know I'm glancing over it, and
yeah,
I wouldn't mind diving into it, but I would like to look into it more. But I wanted to bring it up because it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of relevant as well. You know, so if the picture comes first and it makes its way to becoming this story, and then the story then expands to all these other different things, and then there's this new reiteration of the reboot of the story. So it's that journey of one very simple weird image then making its way into a story that is quite interesting and compelling in many ways.
Like,
it's cool.
And that's like, again, a lot of the older creepypastas were kind of based around images that were kind of found on the internet or someone created. Like, I'm not sure this is quite a actually I think this is a really old school creepypasta, but I think it was like YouTube 666 or something like that.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that one.
Yeah, that's like a really old school one.
Yeah. Cool. So
although I'd say my go-to example of like a creepypasta based around an image would be smile.jpg. It's a very short and low-key one, but I love it just because it's interesting. But again, but the problem with it is like, I'm not sure if the younger ones would quite understand smile.jpg because it goes back, like it's kind of a sort of a creepypasta kind of based off of chainmail of all things.
Oh, okay. Right.
That's like, that makes you feel old.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Even over the chainmail, it's like, oh, if you don't share this with 10 friends, like you get bad luck or you die or something like that.
You'll be visited by some
Jeffrey Epstein.
yeah yeah.
Or Big Bubba.
Yeah. I guess as for someone who, is a fan of the original, sort of found, I guess, as you've sort of said, is the first creepypasta story that you remember reading, or at least, sort of one of the first. What's your thoughts on the reboot in sort of comparison?
I think my biggest gripe is, again, how they kind of had to change up the iconic look. And that's just something that I just have a hard time getting over because I remember first seeing that image and I could remember for like a good few nights I couldn't fucking sleep. And I would like check under my bed or something like that.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to...
Or I could sleep, I had to have the light on.
I'm going to have to agree, man. Like, as, reading both the stories just today, I think, the worst thing about the reboot is just the change. Like, I really like everything else, the way that it pads the story out and adds a bit more world and that sort of thing to it. But the fact that they changed it so drastically as well, I think, really, really hurts the story for me. Maybe it's not as scientifically correct and rooted in sort of real world terms, or if that's even possible to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's possible for bleach to be able to completely bleach your skin.
Yeah, in the at least the way that sort of it happens in the original, but I think it just makes it so much more interesting.
Although I think getting a flare gun to the face would probably do more damage than that.
Yeah.
Although it did describe third-degree burns, which, like, you've done first aid in that, you know how bad third degrees are.
Yeah, there's really.
First degree is like, just skin level. Second degree is like a bit under the skin, and third's like kind of almost down to the bone. Yeah.
And like even they're talking about in the potentials of doing plastic surgery, there's pretty much nothing you can do with plastic surgery when it comes to third degree burns. You can get skin grafts, but as for sort of like making the person look exactly how they used to
is virtually impossible.
Yeah, absolutely impossible. So I do feel that is a good point that, there would be, the wounds would be worse and it wouldn't be necessarily a two-face sort of situation.
I think like, the whole face would just be fucked.
Yeah, I think it would basically be like a skeletal.
I would say, I would probably, considering most flares and flares are magnesium-based.
Yeah.
Which... hard to get burning, but when they burn really hot, like 3,000 degrees centigrade hot. Yeah. So even if it was a couple of seconds, it's going to do some very forever lasting damage.
Yeah.
And just the brightness of the flare would probably make it so you'd be blind in both eyes.
I would think so, yeah. Like,
so medically speaking, there's really no way he would even spend a day or two at hospital at most. He would probably be fighting for like dear life for quite a while in hospital. It would be much less be in a coma for a month or two.
Probably that is a really
if he even
good point.
Makes a recovery.
Yeah.
Like at best, I would say it's a pretty slim chance, but a slim chance of making a recovery.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell he's making a full recovery.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I think you make some really good points there. Yeah, if like they've changed the story, let's just assume they've changed the story or changed like the way that he gets disfigured to be more realistic.
Like I would say, even though in the original story, it's a bit implausible, like him kind of surviving that final confrontation. At least it's a lot more believable than taking a flare gun to the face.
I think so. I would agree.
Like, having your whole body on fire, even if it was like for a couple of seconds, can do quite severe damage, but at least there's a better chance of walking away from that.
Yeah.
Like maybe a flare gun to a chest or a limb you could walk away from, but to the head... I can even see worst case that, again, just the heat from the flare gun can cause kind of the fluids in your brain to boil, basically, which God knows what damage that could do.
Yeah. Like, I think the only way I think that they could have done it where it was similar, like you still have the idea of the flare gun, but you have it not hit him in the face. You say everyone's garage has, sort of chemicals in there.
I see chemical burns and shit.
Yeah, like I've got a big shelf in my garage that has, all different chemicals on there. So I think, like the flare could have gone past him then could have doused him in the chemicals and then lit him on fire that way, because he gets lit on fire in the original. So that's what I reckon they should have done to get a bit more cohesion between the original and the reboot.
I think that would have actually helped.
Yeah.
If not actually having that final confrontation in this story kind of play a bit more like it did in the original, although that would be kind of hard to do with the way they written it.
Yeah.
But it could have just been a fight that have the ambush still happen in the garage, but instead of him pulling a flare gun, it's just, again, he just distracts Jeff and the boys get to jump on him and the fight just breaks out and have like chemical spill and something act as an ignition source.
Yeah. So you could absolutely have done it that way as well.
Or even if he does pull out the flare gun, just have that be the thing that sets off the again.
Exactly.
Because like I think in my shed I've got a fair bit of like methylated spirits lying around.
Yeah, so do I. And other things,
And other things that I, for legal reasons, can't say that I have.
Overall, a pretty good story. Definitely very well written. There's a few little bits here and there.
Oh, there's a bit of jank.
Yeah, some choice words, or at least just like the sequence of certain words was a little funny, but yeah, definitely.
Although one thing I did love in the news story is the banter between the brothers.
Yeah, the banter, that was a really nice addition, I will agree. Yeah, definitely the quality of it, just all of the dialogue as well.
Oh, yeah, that's just, the dialogue's been kind of like, it's like quite a bit better.
Yeah, so I really like that.
But I think the biggest thing I liked about the exchange with the brothers is it feels like something like actual brothers would say to each other.
Yeah, definitely. It does feel, at least, that part definitely feels heaps more real. I think the only point that I want to bring up is the cop, because, there's that sort of questions of, like who the cop is or like the relationship.
Although that line of the...
that was good. Yeah. But yeah, like...
Hats out to the author, which...
Yeah. But yeah, the cop, it would have been nice to find out, sort of what the relationship was there. I don't think we found out, if the cop was like related to any of the boys or...
I kind of assumed that, it was maybe related to one of the kids.
That's what I think. I think, potentially. Like, because I was thinking it was going to be, the cop was going to be a dad to one of the boys. But
either that or like an uncle or something.
But yeah, I think it was most likely an uncle to one of them. And it obviously singles out Randy. So I think that would make a lot of sense. But
although, God, I hate that I'm saying this, but I wouldn't mind bringing back some like old school cops. I remember some of the loopholes they used to do back in the day that wouldn't get them in trouble. Although nowadays I think they would get in absolute shit if they did it. But like one of the things back in the days is they couldn't hit the kid in that. But what they would do is they would get him in a seat. They would place the seat up near the fireplace and that, and they'll get this big fuck off telephone book and have a swing at him.
Oh.
And they will stop short, but the kid not knowing that would lean his head back and smack it right into the fireplace proper.
I see.
That's a good way to punish kids.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the biggest arguments for like kind of like people that I hang around, older people that I hang around and know like they were all for that kind of allowing to the cops to kind of do stuff like that just to kind of beat some respect into the kids. But there's like the really old fellas that I talk to.
Yeah. So I guess we should finish up by doing a rating.
As you said, it's kind of hard to compare the two.
Yeah. So as for just overall creepypastas, I think this is definitely, as I said, very well written. There's some really good ideas there. It falls short a little bit in comparison wise, but
I think it's a good example of kind of what creepypastas have kind of become now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna
where the original is a good example of what they were.
Yes. So I'm gonna rate this one probably an 8.5.
God, this is actually really tough for me because it's just it changes so much to the original but also improves so much on the original, but it changes so many things that I just do not agree with it with. But them, it's also really good. So it's really hard, but I would have to give it a 6. Like I think if it wasn't so strong in so many elements, I would say it could easily go 5 or lower.
Right.
I think it's just the sections that it does well, it does so well that
interesting
more than makes up for it.
Yeah, that's cool.
But in my opinion, it still kind of falls short in what made the original good.
I would agree. But yeah, I'm just I'm able to say I don't have that bias, I guess, and able to get past that a little bit more. Something a bit different today. Doing the
and
two
it's definitely going to be
stories back to back.
Monster of a video.
Oh yeah.
Actually, I wonder if this would probably be up there as our longest. I think it would,
Probably.
rivaling the episode 10 special.
Yes.
The long form.
If you've hung on with us for this long,
Then, well, pat yourself on the back. You deserve it.
Absolutely. But like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and most importantly, share this around with your friends. That helps a whole ton.
Oh, yeah, especially after the time and effort we had to put into making this monster thing.
I guess we'll see you in the next one.
Now, next time, although more importantly, what will I be covering next time when I get around to covering creepypastas? Well, because I guess since you did the second one, I guess technically it's my turn again.
That's right. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, please leave them down below.
Actually, now that I brought up smile.jpg, I think I've just got the perfect one for next time. Cool. So we'll see you next time with smile.jpg.